Okay, this is Kim Calvary, Superintendent Program with SFA. I am doing my third intern activity where I will be leading some professional development. This is another principal in my district, Kimberly White. We are having kind of some technical difficulties this morning, so we have kind of had to get creative. So she is in here, but you're not going to be able to see her because I need to also show you my computer screen. So I'm going to be turning you like this so you can see the screen. And so Kim is behind me. She can see the screen. So one thing that we have kind of struggled with in our district is we are a district that uses SLO goals with our teachers, yet we have not really had professional development in how to implement this, how to train our teachers. It's pretty much been you figure it out on your own. And so each campus principal has kind of struggled, and we've all kind of interpreted it differently. So for my staff development that I wanted to lead, I thought it would be nice for the principals to all get together and kind of do the same thing. So I've got Kim in here. She's going to be my first run through on how this goes. And then we have already developed SLO goals this year with our teachers, but this might be something we can implement over the summer. So first of all, this is slowly but surely using Eduphoria applications to design student learning objectives, because we are a district that uses NWEA's MAP test, and we have based some of our teacher goals, have chosen to use their MAP growth to determine growth, but I believe there's a lot more value in tracking TEKs, specific TEKs that we are doing, that are not just for that grade level, but that can affect multiple years. So this is going to kind of walk us through that. So first of all, my desired outcome of this is that I want to be able to show how Eduphoria applications can make the SLO process easier and a little more electronic, so we don't have to use paper copy trackers that we then upload into Eduphoria, that we all kind of have everything in one place rather than creating even more work for our teachers. So on the TEA's website, there is an introductory video. I'm not going to play this for right now. Kim, have you shown this video
Yes.
to your staff? Yeah. And so this kind of tells the teachers what the SLO goal is, the whole process behind it. He also talks about how there are 3 phases to the process. So the first one is, of course, to create a goal, then we monitor, then at the end we look at their evidence and their success throughout the year. So this one, we're going to focus on phase 1, because I don't know, Kim, if your teachers struggle with this every year, but
Yeah.
this is our second year. Here, I'll turn it back. This is our second year to implement this.
Right.
And so my teachers wanted to say, well, can I just use the same SLO goal I used last year?
Yeah, a few of mine did too.
And especially those indicator levels, if you're well above, if you're above, if you're well below. I know that was kind of tricky for our teachers. Some of ours just wanted to copy the examples from TEA. And so this way, though, is kind of going to hold those teachers accountable to go ahead and dig into their data from the beginning. Because that was another common thing for my teachers was, well, I don't even really know these kids, and I'm having to figure out how I'm going to rate them.
Yeah.
So this kind of piggybacks up off of what they had last year to move forward to their grade level TEKs for this year.
Right.
So, okay. So, all right. So, all right, so we're going to be creating an SLO goal. So one of the things that I have that I talked to my teachers about in the beginning is we need to focus on a foundational skill rather than a TEKs.
Yes.
And so I make them talk through the difference of what is the difference between a foundational skill and the TEK. And I don't know if your teachers say the same thing that mine say, but some of them think, well, they're kind of the same thing. And then the more that you dig and you prompt,
you realize it's really not.
right, you realize the TEKs are more isolated and a foundational skill is more
very
broad.
broad.
So addition and subtraction, and how many times throughout the year do you use addition and subtraction, and things like that. So this was kind of big because we're so, Okay, so one of the things is my teachers were so focused on mastering this TEK and this TEK and this TEK and this TEK that they were kind of tunnel visioned rather than looking at the big picture. So it's important for them to understand they're the most important skills that students develop in the course. They can impact just not this course, but other courses. It can be this year, it can be even beyond. So kind of those building block skills. It should persist throughout the course, and it will be found in multiple TEKs, because if you isolate it to just one TEK or a couple of TEKs, that's going to be really hard to show growth throughout the year. Okay, so this is the SLO skill statement success criteria. First of all, it represents a foundational skill that's specific to their content area. It persists throughout the course. It's measurable through demonstration of the student's skill. It's going to focus on what will improve the teacher's practice, which is teacher dependent. Sometimes my teachers, Kim, I don't know how yours are, but my teachers want to skip their ownership of,
do a blanket.
Yes, do a very blanket. When it comes to submitting evidence, it's that one MAP score in this fall, and then the winter and the spring, and that's really all they do with it. Yeah. And then the skills are captured and clearly defined and appropriate and focused. So now here's where the Eduphoria piece comes in to analyze the data. My teachers, I feel like it's similar on each campus.
Yeah.
But our teachers, they're so overwhelmed at the beginning of the year with getting their rooms ready, getting, things done, that they just kind of glance over the data and they just want to hit the ground running. Sometimes when we put data in front of them, they just toss it to the side. So this is kind of a way to make them analyze it while they're getting to know their children. All right, so I am going to show you how. You're fine. Okay, so let me go back. So if what I would like for my teachers to do next year is I want them to really look at their data, and I want them to focus on a foundational skill. But I'm going to show them how to use reports in Eduphoria based off of the previous year's data. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to get that data. So in Eduphoria, if they were to pull up, these are fake. Well, you'll see in a minute a list with kids' names. Those are fake names. But so this, for example, is 4th grade math. So in Eduphoria, you can go in and you can look at the previous 4th grade STAR data. So I'm going to show you how to do that right quick. So when you go into Eduphoria, you want to go into Aware, and you're going to pull up STAR data. And at the top up here, this drop-down menu, you want to click on Student Learning. The learning breakdown. I should have worn my glasses because I'm not seeing everything great. Okay. So you can do it by teacher. So you want to click on the little red shirt person to do it by teacher. All right. So Miss Barker here, for example. Then when I want to click on her, I want to do it by color. So it ranks it by color. And then I want to change so that I can see it in a kind of a different viewpoint. So when I go down here, there's a lot of red that these kids are coming to us with. But then when I look at it, I can see that, there's some red that, like this one, for example, is at 25%. Well, I want to also look at that TEK. Is that a foundational skill, or is it something that they, test maybe once or twice or whatever? So you want to kind of use this student learning from the previous year, okay? Look at what TEKs are your lowest for your group overall. That's going to be your starting point. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my presentation. All right, so on this particular report, these two right here, when we look at what the TEK actually said, these are the two I'm going to pick for this example's sake. So for 4th grade math, this one had a 44 or 48%. This one had a 47%. So these are going to be the two that I'm going to build my goal on. Okay, so when I look at what those TEKs are, here's what they are. 4.4a, add and subtract whole numbers and decimals to the hundredths place using the standard algorithm. Or 4.4h, solve with fluency 1- and 2-step problems involving multiplication and division, including interpreting remainders. Okay, so would you say that in this, I'm going to test you now.
Okay.
Would you say that in this, there are foundational skills?
Absolutely.
Okay. So I'm not going to focus on necessarily to the 100th place. I'm not even maybe going to care about the standard algorithm, but we're going to talk about adding and
Addition
subtracting
and
whole
subtracting.
numbers and decimals,
Absolutely.
and we're going to talk about solving with fluency with 1 and 2 step problems with multiplication and division.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So these would be 2 good skills I want to build upon. Okay. So then that initial skills profile, that's where we have to have our teachers come up with those 5 indicator levels. And how in the world are you supposed to know what those levels are going to look like? Okay, so you got to think about one thing I want my teachers to start thinking at the beginning of the year is when we get them as 4th graders, they're technically coming to us as 3rd graders. So when I'm assessing them in the beginning of the year, it's kind of unfair for me to assess them as 4th grader when they're really still a 3rd grader. But then by the end of the year, I should be assessing them at a 4th grade level.
Absolutely.
Okay. So if you go to, there are different tools, and I feel like with our teachers, we need to make it as easy as possible for them. Less amount of time, but where they really can dig in deep. Okay. So I went to a training where there is a report, and I kind of felt a little, I'll say, uneducated, but I was never made aware. And but then I felt guilty because I probably should have found it on my own. Okay, but on TEA's website, there are star performance level descriptors where where if a kid needs to get to meets, this is what they need to achieve. If they need to get to masters, this is what they need to achieve. But I had never seen it in the format that they've put it in. Okay?
It's probably a new document because we've not always had those.
Yes. Right. Okay. So if you go to look at 3rd grade level math, it's going to tell you a kid at master's level is going to be achieving at this. And if they're meets, they're going to be achieving this. So if you go through that, you can kind of find those foundational skills that you're looking at with your 4th grade TEKS. You're going to find them on the 3rd grade, and then that's what you're going to use to help you create those indicator levels. Okay? So here, evaluate the reasonableness of solutions in 2-step application problems involving addition and subtraction in whole numbers. Okay, so that was in my 4th grade TEK. And then represent and solve 1 and 2-step application problems involving addition and subtraction of whole numbers. Okay, so I would have the teachers go through and find those. Now, there's 2 different parts that we need to clarify. What do I expect or assume my students will be able to do with this skill statement, and then what my students are actually able to do. All right. So then I have to, of course, rank them. So I'm going to go through here. So these are fake students. And so when I look at their score on just this TEK, so 3.4A ties in to those 2 TEKs with the 4th grade, okay, that I'm looking at. So when I look at that based on last year's data in Eduphoria, I can go ahead and tell this particular skill, though, in 3rd grade only had 3 questions because they made either a 0, a 33, a 66, or 100. But it goes ahead and helps me find my indicator levels or helps me out. So these, of course, are, well above, average, well below. All right. So this is how I'm going to use my data to know at the beginning of the year, because we often hear that, well, I got to create this, and I don't even know my kids, and, we haven't had our map window yet, and we haven't had an assessment, so this is going back and making them dig back in, which they should be doing, okay, and dig into last year's data. Oh, my, okay, all right, so they're going to collect the data, so they're going to look at that, and then they're also going to be collecting data for the first few weeks. Okay, and our district, I know, gives us a set point on when they have to have those in. Usually it's the end of September, so kind of depending on when you started or not. But they recommend that you don't go past 9 weeks that you go ahead and get it set up, because otherwise a fourth of your year is gone. Okay. And so these assessments, though, are not necessarily part of a unit test. And I think that's another thing. Teachers always want to formally assess and count that rather than some of those informal assessments. And so they can be those bell ringers, the exit tickets, the warm up, those things. Okay, so then they're going to use this information along with their data in Eduphoria. Okay, and then they can use the map test too if they had some of those TEKs on there. So you've got multiple data points. All right, so now you're going to use all of these for your targeted skills profile. Okay, so this profile is a means for considering long-term goals for your students. They're based on the distribution of skills seen in the students you have. Remember, this is something that's throughout the year several times. It's not just isolated. And it's going to describe what level of your students they should display at the end of the course. Now, if I'm basing on the beginning of the year, I'm going to use that 3rd grade predictor, but we're in 4th grade. These are 4th level skills. So then when I come up with my criteria for the end of the year, because I don't know, do you make your teachers do the initial and the end at the beginning? I do that as well. Okay.
Yes.
Because to me, we need to know what our end goal is. We're going to work backwards. All right. Absolutely. So if we looked at the 3rd grade skills or indicators for those levels, now that we've had a whole year of 4th grade, we're going to look at what are the indicator levels for a kid to get meets, masters, approaches. Okay. So I pulled out evaluate and justify the reasonableness of solutions to multi-step application problems involving addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division of whole numbers. Okay. So that's for my master's group. Solve application problems involving addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division of whole numbers, including, here we get our 2-step problems, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so this is masters, this is meets. And then if you were to go on down, you can kind of break it down to probably 2 levels of approaches and 1 for, does not approach. So this is going to be what I'm going to have my teachers use to then create their end of the year skills profile. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay, and then these are, of course, some helpful links. So you've got sample SLOs. I feel like, though, my teachers depend too much on those. So when I do this training with my teachers, I want to make sure that they have those as a guide, but that I'm holding them accountable to the Eduphoria data, the SLO, not the SLO, the Eduphoria data and the performance indicators, and I really want them to focus on that. Because to me, if I'm just having them copy from TEA, it's just like a checklist. We're done. And then there's also those performance level descriptors. So I know that your teachers may not have quite the same data but do y'all have, because you do map testing, but do you do anything? I mean, I know you do unit tests and things like that, but your campus doesn't have STAR data.
No.
So how do y'all do your SLO?
Really, for us, it's super important that we focus on foundation. And so the core here is literacy. And so I always, no matter what math looks like, and I'm sorry, that's probably terrible to say, we always focus on the lowest or the biggest need in foundations for literacy. So it could be decoding, it could be recognizing letter sounds, because all that leads to reading, right? So our, I guess the indicators or data we use, we do reading assessments, DRA. We use screeners that we kind of have created ourselves to decide which kids need what, and just in detail, MAP gives us a huge learning continuum of where the kids are missing some of those gaps. So those are kind of the sources we use to determine.
And then how does kindergarten build off of pre-K, and how does 1st grade build off of kinder?
So all of that information, just kind of like all the other grade levels, the only issue we have is pre-K. We don't have like a system where they have their assessments in Eduphoria. But 1st grade, definitely, we use a lot of data from kindergarten. So we use our MAP data, DRA, unit assessments, and it's a lot easier for 1st grade to go through this process than it is for kinder, because there's not a whole lot of data.
Right. So if I were actually, let's say, assistant superintendent or professional development coordinator or whatever, and I were truly doing this with a group of administrators, I would treat it just like I would be training my teacher. So if this were a true thing, I would have, grade levels assigned to each of you.
Right.
I would have you look at some Edge4U data. I would have you look at performance indicators. So I would mimic the way I think our teachers need to do it with y'all, because then you're going to be the ones in turn that's training your teachers. And I think it would provide continuity and consistency among the campuses,
The district.
kind of that vertical or even horizontal, vertical, whichever way you want to look at it. I think it would help across the board because, too, we have teachers that move from one campus to another campus, and it's hard when the expectations are not the same, and even though we're in the same district.
Right.
So I just have struggled the last couple of years with how to truly help my teachers with SLO. So I thought this kind of, makes them analyze their data, make them look at it, rather than, well, I'm just going to wait and see how they do on the fall test.
Right.
So I don't know if you felt like that was useful, but I'm definitely going to try that.
Yeah, I think it was really good, honestly.
Okay.
I wouldn't just say that because
No,
I'm
okay.
a friend. But,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so this is take 2 of my training. I wanted to kind of get reflection pieces from one of my teachers. This is Amy Spurger. She teaches 4th grade math. And I wanted to get her take on SLO because I've trained her in this. And since I feel like this is an area of need for the district to kind of revamp the way that we're training it, I wanted you to kind of talk about what is your reflection. This is our 2nd year to use SLO. And so what is your reflection? How do you think it's going to, and be totally honest?
Well, I think it's kind of difficult to figure out what my SLO goal should be.
Okay.
And then I kind of forget about it until it's time to put more numbers in and look at it again. It doesn't seem like it's relevant that it just stays at the front of my head.
Well, I know when I've met with a lot of teachers on theirs, initially they use MAP because that's 3 checkpoints a year and that measures growth. My fear as an administrator is that's too global. Do you feel like that's a good indicator for you to really know how they're growing, or is that too broad? I mean, what are your thoughts on it?
I think it's kind of broad and it doesn't always tie with our TEKS. So if I'm focusing on their growth, but they're outside of my TEKS, then is that significant? And am I doing benefit to my student?
Okay, so I want to show you kind of an idea I have.
Okay.
So I ran it by a principal on another campus this morning because my goal would be if I were, over professional development for a district, or even if this is something that people like, can we move forward with doing it district-wide next year? So I want honest feedback on this. Okay. All right, so I'm going to kind of walk you through this, and I know, again, we're having technical difficulties. So I'm going to walk you through I kind of went through this morning, but so to me, when you're doing SLO, you need to focus on foundational versus specific TEKS. So what does that mean to you?
Well, our TEKS, I agree with that but our TEKS don't have foundational skills. And so when a kiddo comes to me and they're behind, I have to teach them 4th grade. But if they're working on a 1st grade level, I can't teach how to multiply and divide if they don't know how to add and subtract.
Okay. So I'm going to show you kind of a way that I did it. And I chose you because I did examples with math. Okay. All right. So this is an Edge4U report where I pulled it up by student learning standard. Okay. All right. So this is on 4th grade Math Star last year, how our kids did last year on Star. Okay. So you can see we've got a lot of red.
Yes, a lot.
Okay. But
I didn't know, does it come in another color?
Oh, you can color code it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
Okay.
there should be there should be green up here.
There should be green. Okay.
Okay. So but when we look at this report, we need to look at, some skills on here are tested, once or twice or
right.
whatever.
It's one question and that's it.
So I want to kind of look at what is a foundational skill that we get a lot of bang for our buck.
Okay.
All right. And so when I look at these two right here, and I'll show you what they are in a minute, but this one was a 48 and this one was a 47%.
Okay.
Okay. So we need to bring those up. So now that would be 4.4a, adding and subtracting whole numbers and decimals to the hundredths place using the standard algorithm. To be honest, I don't care about the hundredths place or the standard algorithm, but I need them to be able to add and subtract whole numbers and decimals because that we use that in a lot of skills.
Right. And I don't care
Right.
which algorithm you
Right.
use, but just to
Okay.
be able to do it.
4.4h, solve with fluency 1 and 2 step problems involving multiplication and division.
Right.
Okay, including interpreting remainders. That part I'm not as worried about. All right, so now when you get those fourth graders at the beginning of the year, though, they're not really like fourth graders.
No, they're still third graders.
They're still third graders. And so a common problem that I have heard from teachers is I'm supposed to create these different target levels and figure out what level my kid is on, and I don't even really know these kids yet.
Right.
And we do give you a few weeks, but still that's not a lot of time. So one way to really look at it is focusing on the data that we do have. So you have that eduphoria from how the fourth graders did last year, but these are performance levels descriptors from TEA on STAR.
Okay.
So a student, in order to get master's level on third grade math, a student should be able to do these things and get meets do these things, and it goes on to approaches. Okay. So if you look on the performance level descriptors, if you find one that has to do with those two TEKs I just pointed out that we did week on in fourth grade last year, I can find evaluate the reasonableness of solutions in two-step application problems involving addition and subtraction of whole numbers.
Right.
Okay, that ties in. Okay, so that's on, this would be what I would consider well above average on my targeted, my different indicator levels. Because on third grade, they had to do this to get mastery.
Right.
Okay, then for meets, represent and solve one and two step application problems involving addition, subtraction of whole numbers. All right, so that could be my above average. And then I'm going to go ahead and drill down to do average, below average, well below average. I'm going to create my indicator, 5 indicator levels based on what they were expected to do on their third grade STAR test.
Not what they're expected to do by the end of fourth grade.
I'm going to do that for my end of the year.
For your end of the year.
End of the year indicators.
Okay.
Okay, so this is how they should have done at the end of third grade year, basically when I'm getting them.
Right.
Okay. So I'm going to tie it back into my fourth grade level TEKs, though. But right now, they're like third graders.
Right.
So I'm going to measure how they can add and subtract whole numbers and multiply and divide one and two step problems.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm going to go through, all right, so these are fake students. Okay, so I'm going to go through and I'm going to look at that first TEK, 3.4a, which ties into our 4.4a.
Okay.
Okay. And I'm going to look at, on their STAR test last year, it was one where they only had 3 questions.
Okay.
Okay, but still, that's what I got to work with because that's how I need to know where they are to begin with. So it kind of goes ahead and gives me a good starting point of, okay, on that, in that particular foundational skill, all of these made 100. So they're probably, right now, well above average.
Right.
And then it kind of helps me drill down. So this
So
is
maybe
my
if they got
starting
2
point.
out of the 3, then they're average.
Right.
And then they're low average, and then if they're 0, then they're at the bottom.
Well below, yes.
Okay.
So this, I feel like, would be a good kind of way to help a starting point.
Okay.
Okay. So then remember, within the first 3 weeks, we try not to, you need to do it before that 9-week period, but we always try to give y'all that date of you have to
Right.
have them turned in, usually it's by the end of September. That gives you time to, you've already analyzed your previous data, you've analyzed, you've done the MAP test by then, you've done informal assessment, so you're doing data collection formally and informally on those 2 skills to help you figure out what that different level is.
If they're still where they were at the end of third grade.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay? And then that's where you're going to place them for your initial skills profile. Okay? Then at the end of the year, that's their targeted one because this is by the end of fourth grade. These are the indicator levels we want them to be.
And is that skill still on fourth grade? Oh, today it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So this is our fourth grade one. So then here we go. For masters now, if you're looking at it's the same foundational skill basically But now, from how they had it in third grade, this is how they have mastered it in fourth grade. Okay, so that's evaluate and justify reasonableness of solutions to multi-step application problems involving addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division of whole numbers.
So they added the multiplication and division portion to that.
Yes. Okay. And then here, solve application problems involving addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division of whole numbers, including one-step problems and problems with letters representing the unknown. So these are the two for fourth grade. So now from here, I'm going to build my end-of-the-year targeted statements, which I have y'all do at the beginning.
Right.
Because you need to kind of work backwards. You need to know where they need to be at the end. So, to me, if we can pull our data from Eduphoria in the beginning, using these performance indicators from TEA to help us level our kids, that is better than just kind of saying, well, here's an example from TEA. Y'all kind of get together and decide how you're going to use MAP to determine if they really grew or not.
Right.
That's my opinion. What is your opinion as a teacher?
Well, I find it difficult using MAP for a couple of reasons. Because I feel like I didn't set the growth standard on that, so they measure a growth standard that I might not understand. And so I am relying on them, MAP, to interpret whether or not my student grew. Okay?
Right.
And I don't always understand how they measure growth, or you know, I can't see which questions they've had, what they've gotten wrong, what they've gotten right. So it's hard for me to see what they did and what they didn't do. I do think that the foundational skills are essential for growth. That on one of your sheets that you just showed, with the fake students' names, like one student got only one of the questions right on that foundational skill of adding and subtracting, but they got an 80 or 90 on their STAR test, and I go, how can you get that on your STAR test if you can't add and subtract?
Right.
Because it's essential. So we have to have those foundational skills. And I think this way does make it more clear, you know, that how to use STAR, and that STAR is essential, and those TEKs that were taught and that were tested. And I never saw this before, where what their mastery performance, what they can and they can't do, I didn't even know that existed. So that's kind of mind-blowing that's out there.
It was pretty mind-blowing for me too. I haven't seen it put in this way.
Right, I just thought it was a score, like you get, I didn't have an interpretation of what their performance would be. I thought it was just, you get this score, and then,
because of the grades you got, not these were the
grades.
skills you mastered in order to be at that level.
Right. So, and I get that you have to master those skills. So I think that it would be easier to set the beginning and the ending, you know, for growth, because that's what we want. We want to take our third grader and we want to make them a fourth grader by the end of the year. Actually, I want to make them a fifth grader. I want them ready to walk into fifth grade. But with the 3 assessments that we have to do in the year, I wonder, I know we could use benchmark for one of them, because that would really tie to the STAR and to those skills. I just wonder about the initial one, how we would validate those scores. How, you know, because like if we don't have a benchmark, or we don't have a STAR test at the beginning of the year, or a STAR assessment, then I want everybody on the same playing field, you know, like if because I think that this is great and that we should use it across the district, and like everybody on my team should do it. But I also want to make sure that everybody's really measuring their students correctly, so that we really did have growth and that we don't overinflate growth.
Well, yes.
Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay.
It does. And that is, from my role in the district, that's a problem that I see. And so that's why I feel like campuses are so isolated and doing their own thing. And in some ways, it does get inflated to look like, oh, we did really great, or, oh, I think teachers do that too. When it's time for me to sit down and go over theirs, they kind of inflate theirs, or they pick SLO things that they feel like, I know I'm going to get a lot of growth and I know my kids are going to do well, so I'm going to pick this one because they don't want to say it's easy, but it's easy to show growth.
Right.
And so I feel like we need to have something district wide where it's consistent across the board. Like, this is how we are all doing it, not so much autonomy.
Right. I agree with that.
Okay.
And that's why I like having the in stone, this is what a fourth grader should do. Like, this is all of our goal, because I need my kids to master fourth grade when they leave me. Like, they have to be ready for fifth grade. But when they've come to me on first and second grade, and and then the people behind me all had, oh yeah, our kids all grew, and we won. It's hard for me, and I'm, me, I'm pretty black and white, and
very competitive,
and I want to win. So I like that, like, you can use star for your end number, you can use benchmark for your middle, but I just wonder about that initial placement, and I wondered if you really could use.
But you can start with their third grade start, because you're tying it in. If you go back, you're tying it in on their performance level. So, like, you look at the side by side, like our lead forward documents, where in this grade it's equivalent to this.
Right.
So you're looking at the skill basically side by side. It's still addition and subtraction in this way, and multiplying and dividing in this way. But now we're taking it to a new level.
And my assumption is that if they can do really well on it in third grade, when they get to me in a couple months, they should still be able to be
maintain
doing well
that
on it.
level, right?
But I don't have that same assumption with MAP, and that's what I don't like about MAP.
Okay.
Because I can affect a student's performance based on whether or not I help them, or based on whether or not I give them audio assistance, headphones, things like that. A dictionary that they're not supposed to have. I mean, I can really affect their MAP growth and their MAP scores based on how much assistance I give them. I can't give assistance on STAR.
Right.
I mean, that's pretty rigid. That's pretty, this is black and white. These are the rules. You can help, you can't help, you can't help. And so everybody's kind of on the same playing field then, as opposed to, well, one teacher might just help a little more or explain something, or everybody can use headphones and get it audio, audio or.
Right.
So I do like that all better. I think that's, like, it kind of, that blows me away. Like, I didn't know that we had that.
I did not either until I went to a conference a few weeks ago, and when I knew there were levels, but I'd never seen it like this. And when they showed it, I was like,
yeah, I know that's
wow.
true. I mean, like, that's a rubric.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's like a rubric of this is what a fourth grader should know, and this is what a third grader should know, and I didn't know we had one of those.
At that level. These are the skills that they've mastered. Right. Okay, so I know, and one of the reasons I chose you is because you're on the Superintendent Advisory Council as well. So you have a voice in how things are done, and so I knew you would voice to me.
I do have a voice.
How you felt about it. So I just feel like as an administrator, it has been hard for me to guide the staff into the expectation, and as an administrator and speaking to other principals, we don't feel confident really in how to train y'all or the best way to guide you. So that's why I kind of put this together. So, I mean, I might move forward with it a little bit for next year if,
I think this is way more clear than what we've had before.
Okay.
Because, it's like, all of a sudden 2 years ago, you have to have this SLO goal, and it's like, what? How do you say that?
And I feel like teachers, it's just a check mark. Okay, fine, I did the fall. Okay, now I'm going to do the mid, and now I'm going to do the spring. But there's really no evidence to back it up other than, well, I'm just using my MAP scores, or I'm going to use fluency scores, or I'm going to use these little quizzes. And to me, this is also making you really dig into your data at the beginning of the year.
To get to know the students better. Yeah, I think it really would. And breaking down the STAR test like that by foundational skill is helpful, because if I got kids that are coming to me that can't add and subtract, we can't move on. We have to be able to fix those foundational skills, and work on those as we're learning the new things. Because
Right.
if we don't have those building blocks, then they're not going to add to them.
Right. Okay. Well, I appreciate
Well,
you sitting in.
You're very welcome.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks.